Good morning, everyone. This is Robert Butler. I'll be your host today. We'll be speaking about product information management and the benefits of that solution for manufacturing organizations. We're pleased to have Omar Chuktai, Senior Principal and PIM Practice Lead from Mastech InfoTrellis, joining us today. Just a couple of ground rules on this. Everyone is muted just for the quality of the recording on this. Recording will be available after this webinar. If you're interested in having a copy of that recording, please let us know. We will also make the presentation available for everyone. You can send a request for the recording and or the presentation to me, Robert, at mastechinfotrellis.com. With that, Omar, I'm going to turn it over to you. Please take it away.
Thank you, Robert. Robert, just wanted to do a voice check. Can everybody hear me properly?
Yes. Go ahead, Omar.
Yeah. Thank you, Robert. Hi, my name is Omar Chuktai, and I have 15 years of experience in the MDM space. My MDM journey started with Trigo Technologies, one of the pioneers of product information management. Trigo was acquired by IBM in 2004, and the technology was renamed to IBM MDM Collaborative Edition, which is currently IBM's PIM offering. So just a walkthrough of the agenda. Today I'll be discussing some of the key business challenges that are impacting the manufacturing industry. I will also talk about how a centralized PIM hub can help alleviate these challenges along with some case studies. Robert will then share some information about Mastech InfoTrellis. During the webinar, please feel free to type your questions in the chat window. We will address the questions after the presentation during the Q&A session. So just starting off with the business challenges, product information is essential for driving the key business processes in manufacturing organizations. Processes like product lifecycle management, supply chain, distribution, orders management, regulatory compliance, demand forecasting and analytics, warranty and support are heavily dependent upon a consistent, pristine, and timely product information. Lack of mature enterprise-level PIM program not only results in inefficient processes, but also organizations may risk losing their competitive edge in terms of increased time to market, suboptimal after-sales service, and compliance issues. So I'll be going through these verticals in the upcoming slides. So I wanted to start off by sharing one of my recent experiences. I recently completed a data governance assignment with a manufacturer. I wanted to share a couple of key bullet points about their product maintenance policy and procedures. So the way they started their new product introduction process was through a spreadsheet. They maintained the spreadsheet, and all the stakeholders contributed the information to spreadsheets. Once the spreadsheet was complete, and which was a pretty long, drawn-out process, the data stewards went into 3 systems to manually enter that information, the manufacturing ERP, the financial ERP, and they had a small product master as well. So all this effort was done manually just by reading the spreadsheet and punching data into those systems. Once the data was complete, the process went through 10 laborious manual validation steps. So net-net, a new product introduction cycle for that particular manufacturer took months to actually sort of even get to a point where the product was out of the door. And as one of the executives of that organization pointed out, that introducing a new product line is a dark cloud versus excitement in the organization. So this probably is maybe the last statement was a little bit of an exaggerated account from the executive, but it does talk volumes to some of the hardships that the manufacturing industry might be facing at this point in time to introduce a new product into the market without feeling the pains of multiple entries and manual validations. So just moving on to the next slide. So from a supply chain management perspective, supply chain in a broad brushstroke is movement and storage of raw materials, in-flight inventory, and then finished goods from source to destination. So as you can see that this process is pretty elaborate from an end-to-end perspective. Pristine product information is required to make this process efficient and streamlined. Manufacturing industry in itself is a very dynamic industry. Mergers and acquisitions are commonplace, and companies are always looking to increase their market share. So in that pursuit, what happens is that the technology landscape of an organization becomes pretty convoluted. So say, for instance, if a manufacturing organization is in North America and now they want to go into, say, Latin America or Europe or Asia Pac, then through mergers and acquisitions or through expansion, what happens is that they end up with multiple ERP systems in various geographies. And when it comes time to sell products in these geographies, manual processes are put in place to set up the items in the appropriate ERP systems or the relevant systems. Again, some of the challenges that we have seen in the field are that, say, for instance, in different geographies, the same item numbers can mean different products. Different item numbers can mean same products. All these issues compound the time to market argument that that goes hand in hand with having a very complex technology landscape. So having a centralized PIM program helps address the supply chain issues to a large extent, and we'll talk about that in the upcoming slides. Regulatory compliance goes hand in hand with a lot of manufacturing sectors. For instance, if we talk about medical devices, FDA approvals are required. Similarly, for hazardous material safety data sheets, SOX compliance, audit reports, these are all things which the manufacturers are routinely subjected to in order to make sure that they are compliant with the regulatory bodies. And without having a centralized PIM in place, there are no set processes to get this information to these regulatory bodies in a timely fashion, and because the regulatory bodies at times require information in certain formats, certain procedures are required. Most of or a lot of times the records fail when they go to the regulatory bodies, and a lot of churn gets created as a result. So again, having a centralized PIM can help alleviate some of these issues. So just taking a quick look at the benefits of having a PIM suite in, say, a manufacturing ecosphere. Just talking about IBM PIM as a poster child, it is a market leader in its space. One of the key factors which contributes to it being the market leader is its flexible data modeling. Not only does the flexible data modeling allows complex data scenarios to be modeled very easily, the flexible data model also sets the footing for a true multi-domain kind of MDM, which is, again, a true benefit for a big organization. Flexible data modeling also helps model attributes like supply and demand side, digital asset management, upsell, cross-sell relationships, regulatory attributes. So all these attributes can be harbored in a very consistent fashion within the IBM-PIM and allows manufacturers with a unique platform to streamline their processes. Alongside IBM-PIM comes with an integrated workflow. What that allows the organization to do is to model complex new item introduction, item lifecycle management, or regulatory compliance like business processes in a single repository. And with collaborative authoring and enriched validations, the data is pristine at the source, and then that pristine data can be proliferated to various arteries of the organization to reap the benefits of consistent product information to drive streamlined supply chain management activities, omni-channel trade options, and regulatory compliance, and so forth. So with IBM-PIM in the mix, this is just some data points for organizations to think about. With an effective modeling of a centralized PIM hub, we have observed 60% reduction in time to market for various organizations for their new product introduction processes. And similarly, for the regulatory compliance pieces, having a centralized PIM has reduced the error rate up to 80%. So those are some of the metrics to keep in mind, and you can actually kind of see the value that a centralized PIM can bring to the table for manufacturing organizations. Alongside, thanks to the flexible data model that IBM-PIM offers, a true 360-degree view of the product information can be manifested using a centralized hub, which not only provides the basis of efficient processes for supply chain and regulatory, but also decreases the time to market and provides the right amount of product visibility that is required for even the future and upcoming initiatives. So just wanted to substantiate most of the claims that I've just made in the previous slides by some case studies. So this is the case study for a manufacturer who belongs to the medical device manufacturing sector. So the problem over there was that their supply chain was in shambles. They had, over a period of time, it was a global organization, they ended up with multiple ERP systems in various geographies, and the product setup, for instance, was, for a lack of any better word, a nightmare. So say, for instance, if they wanted to add a product which was available in multiple geographies, they would have to manually go in and actually punch in that product in various systems. Ensuring the consistency of the information was challenged, and the fact that the supply chain required that information in a timely fashion, all the integration hooks in place were inefficient as well. So with the IBM's MDM put in place as the centralized global repository for product information management, we were not only able to successfully create a central repository for mastering product data, but also we harbored the regulatory attributes to facilitate their regulatory processes. Given that it was a medical device manufacturer, FDA regulations applied to them, and they were at task to send their product information or registration to FDA. So all that was done in a centralized hub, and the product lifecycle and the regulatory compliance management was achieved through multiple workflows. So as a consequence, their time to market of their product reduced by 60%. That is from the end-to-end process perspective. And they were able to achieve the product registration with the regulatory body in 3 weeks, which was completely a miracle from their perspective. So just to sort of underscore the point that a centralized MDM hub can really yield dividends for a manufacturing organization in a variety of ways. The next case study is on similar lines. This is for an electronics manufacturer. Again, the problem was that they were maintaining product information in various systems. As a result, the information was fragmented. There were a lot of manual processes which were inducted to maintain their product information. And the biggest downside of their as-is setup was that the downstream applications were getting inconsistent and incomplete data. So their downstream processes were suffering as a consequence. So again, as part of helping out the customer, global MDM for product information was introduced. Not only was all the product information harbored in one repository, but automation was achieved through flexible workflows and through rich integration capabilities that the IBM tool offers. Real-time integration with the upstream and downstream systems was achieved. So as a consequence, again, the client achieved 30% productivity increase in productivity of their processes. Not only that, one of the key features that IBM PIM offers, which is global connecting or syncing data with global data sources like OneSync, that was actually part of the project as well, and that was achieved as part of the delivery effort. So a lot of goodness was reaped as a consequence of introducing centralized product information management. So this is just a picture of how MDM fits into an organization. So the center vertical kind of alludes to the capabilities that the IBM MDM offers, starting from bottom up. The flexible data model allows you to model true multi-domain kind of MDM scenarios. The collaborative authoring alludes to the rich workflow functionality that the product offers to model complex scenarios like new product introduction, product lifecycle management, regulatory compliance, and so forth. And not only can you build these workflows, but these workflows could be set up in a way where it enhances the collaborative authoring, and you can parallelize steps to decrease the overall time to market of a business process. So once the information is authored and managed within the PIM organization, the PIM tool, the integration modules that PIM offers allows integration with upstream and downstream sources in real time, near real time, and batch, and that allows for a seamless integration of this particular technology with all arteries of a manufacturing organization. So again, we can field a lot of questions during the Q&A session, but over to you, Robert, for some important information about Mastech InfoTrellis.
Great, thank you, Omar. And again, what we're wanting to focus on today is really the best practices and how to be successful with the PIM solution to add value to your manufacturing environment. Just a little bit about InfoTrellis. We've been in the business from a company perspective and resource perspective since the 1990s. We actually started as an organization in 2007 when our founders, who were the co-architects of the product that IBM purchased in 2005 to help launch their entry into the MDM space. We've been focusing on purely data management solutions. We're a very focused player in the market space, and the value and the reason this I think is of importance is to really talk about how to be successful in our findings and our beliefs in working with IBM and a lot of different customers. Is it's not just about the product. When you select a vendor, and obviously we would hope you would select Mastech InfoTrellis to help you with your solution, but whoever you select, you want to make sure that they understand not just your business, but also they understand PIM, product information management, and data management in general. It is a very often misperceived complex deployment, and you want to work with someone that's got significant experience in that space. What we're trying to show with this slide is that we have been very focused in the master data management and product information management field for many years. We've literally done over 100 deployments as an organization and through our resources in this field, and been extremely successful with ensuring that our customers are very successful with their deployments, achieving return on investment and value for the projects that they allocate in time and budget to. Next slide, please. So one of the ways that we've determined that is just critical to ensure the success of a project is, quite frankly, no silver bullet here, of course, but other than, as I mentioned, the expertise and the knowledge of the PIM solutions as well as the industry, but it's good product, solid product, project management. One of the things that Mastech InfoTrellis has done is we have created a methodology that we follow very closely to ensure the success of organizations. And again, this is something that you should work with your preferred systems integration firm or your consulting firm that's assisting you to understand what that process is going to look like. What we found is a phased implementation approach does in fact work best. The methodology that we've put together is a combination of Rational Unified Process, or RUP, as well as Agile. And as you can see in this slide, it's a deliverables-based deployment with iterations where we start out and we'll go through discovery and assessment, helping organizations define the business case and a program strategy. We go through scoping and an approach to ensure that everybody's on the same page. You got executive buy-in, you got the project scope, your requirements and the plan, and then of course the analysis and design and iterative process around that, where we're doing detailed requirements, systems architecture, and feature designs and so on. And of course, as you go through that, updating your project plans to address any changes that might come through there. The development and QA, where we're creating the staging and ready for the system, and putting together all of the functional and performance test cases and matrices, and making sure that we understand what the test results need to be, and validating against that. And then finally, the deployment, where you actually get a deployed solution software, your data load statistics, the client acceptance, and so on. So very, very important from our perspective as a best practice that you do work with a consultancy that has experience in the field, and that they can walk you through this process up front. Make sure that you've got your executive buy-in, you've got your data stewards in place, and everybody understands what their roles are. And the consultancies that you work with should be able to help you walk through and plan through that entire process as you're going through. So with that, I'm going to say let's open it up to questions. I've seen several come through at this point. We do appreciate y'all's time today. And I will mention that, as I mentioned earlier, that this is being recorded. We will make it available after the fact. If you do have additional questions after this, please feel free to reach out to either myself or Omar. You can see our information on the screen at this point. We'll get started with the first question. Omar, one question is, what is the typical time frame for a deployment for a PIM solution?
Yes, so really great question, Robert. So typically speaking, in our experience, what we have seen is that a good foundational phase with considerable return of investment takes close to, I would say, 6 to 8 months to implement. So now the way we implement as Mastech Infotrellis is that we have a methodology called Smart MDM. And essentially, it's an iterative methodology. So what we do is that we divvy up the 6 to 8 month time period into 3 or 4 meaningful releases, if you may. And what that allows us to do is to not only deliver on these releases and obviously keep the momentum flowing from an implementation perspective, but it also provides insight into the product and the implementation on a regular basis, and the client feedback can actually be incorporated in the multiple releases or the subsequent releases. So net, I think I would say it's a 6 to 8 month kind of a phase. However, after that, once the foundational piece is in place and all the return of investment is being yielded from the first phase, then the incremental phases, typically what we have seen are from anything from 2 to 4 months, depending upon what the client's aspirations are.
Thank you, Omar. Next question, who needs to be involved from the company side, from our organization side? It's apparently not IT only. Can you talk about what the mix of the project roles and resources are?
Yeah, so product information management, what we have typically seen is actually a very highly business-driven function, because the business has a say in how the data model needs to look like, what hierarchies they want to model, and then how the business processes have to come together. So I would say that it's kind of like a half and half between business involvement and IT. Where IT comes into play is more from an integration perspective, how the upstream and downstream information needs to be aggregated and syndicated. That's where the IT arm comes in for their guidance around the source and the destination systems, and then of course some insight into the enterprise architecture and how PIM fits into the whole ecosphere.
Okay. Next question. You mentioned that it supports multi-domain. If we're wanting to also master supplier and customer information, can that be done under the same UI?
Yes, that is correct. So just to sort of zoom into the flexible data modeling, what it allows you to do is to obviously model all facets of the product information. We talked about that. You have attributes, demand side, supply side, regulatory attributes, you have GDS specific attributes, and so forth. So all of those can be modeled. So just to sort of educate a little bit on how the IBM PIM is set up, within the application, it exposes the concept of catalogs. So catalog is driven off of a flexible data model, which is called spec. So you can have a spec which alludes to product, and then you associate it to the catalog, and that becomes your container where you author and master your product information. Similarly, you can build additional catalogs with additional specifications, and one could be for supplier, one could be for vendors, one could be for location. So depending upon the scenario, the flexible data modeling allows you to build multi-domains MDM.
Thank you. And one other question, we're currently working on our data governance program, but it is not complete. Do we need to wait until it's complete and deployed before we look at starting our PIM project?
Yeah, so that is a good question. So data governance actually comes, and this is just speaking from my personal experience. So I have been involved in projects where the data governance is kind of like a precursor to a technology solution, because through data governance, people, process, technology triangle gets vetted out, and then the organization truly understands what kind of technology solution they need to put in place to streamline their processes and so forth. So yes, so that is certainly one aspect that we have seen. The other aspect is that sometimes the situation is that the client already has an ecosystem, and they're not necessarily looking to necessarily rock the boat, if you may. And what they are, and perhaps in that particular scenario, a centralized PIM already exists. So the data governance in that particular case kind of plays an overlay, kind of in terms of streamlining the processes. So it's not necessarily adding more technology or more bricks to the architecture. It's more around streamlining what the client currently has, more emphasis on people and processes and less on technology. So depending upon where the organization is at in their journey, I have seen both. So I think that from a data governance perspective, if it were front-ended, then I think that it would be a sound strategy to at least get the results of the data governance and then plug in the MDM technology the way it needs to be.
Very good. Thank you, Omar. I don't see any other questions at this point. Again, if you do have questions, you can send them to us via the chat window. Or, of course, please feel free to reach out to either Omar or myself. Here's one other quick question. Is IBM PIM available in the cloud?
Yes, it indeed is. So it started off as an on-prem offering initially, but now IBM has put in considerable amount of work to actually make it cloud-enabled. So indeed, it is available on cloud, and there are some customers that we are working with right now who actually have or are in the process of implementing it in cloud. So that capability is available.
Okay, thank you. And can you briefly talk about integration capabilities of IBM PIM?
Yes, so that is a really good question. So the way the IBM PIM is set up at this particular point in time, and this is probably the I would say the reason why it is the market leader, that it offers obviously the flexible data model that we talked about and the integrated workflow, but it also has a built-in ETL functionality. So in order for you or any customer to integrate a system with MDM, it is a wizard-based import and export module which allows you to build ETL flows, taking from a flat file or messaging or what have you, and then seamlessly integrating it with the data model that has been constructed for that customer. So that is, I would say, the winning feature of IBM MDM PIM, a one-stop shop of integrations, workflows, and flexible data modeling.
Very good. Thank you, Omar. Any other questions, please send them in. If we don't have a chance to respond to them at the end of this session, then we'll be happy to respond in person. Certainly, if you do have questions and you'd like a specific conversation and discussion with Omar about your specific organization requirements, we'd love to hear from you. Here we go. One other question I see is, how supportive IBM-PIM in accommodating bill of materials information at all? Is it in its data model?
Yeah, so again, it ties to the flexible data model. So within IBM-PIM, you can harbor information like bills of material. That is not necessarily an uncommon occurrence. I would say, have seen customers where bill of materials have been modeled within PIM. So again, it's the same concept of the catalogs and multi-domain. So you have, just to sort of brainstorming maybe one step deeper. So you would have a catalog for your core product information, and similarly, you would have a catalog for, say, bills of material. And then these catalogs can be linked together through the primary key, foreign key kind of relationship. So yes, you can certainly model bill of material as part of product information management.
Very good. Thank you, Omar. I don't see any other questions. So with that, I think we'll bring the session to a conclusion. Again, I thank everyone for your attendance today. If you do have follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out to either Robert at masstechinfotrials.com or Omar at masstechinfotrials.com. There is a survey at the end of this session. If you would do us a favor and fill out the survey when it pops up, we would greatly appreciate it to make sure that we're delivering the kind of content that's adding value to you. Thank you very much for your time. This does conclude our presentation today.